găsit tuturor, sunt Marius Constantinescu. Prima invitată astăzi la Ediție Limitată este Mezzo-Soprana din Cehia, Magdalena Kožená. În 2021 ne-a vizitat în cadrul Festivalului Internațional George Enescu, alături de soțul ei, veneratul dirijor britanic Sir Simon Rattle. Magdalena Kožená s-a născut la Brno, în Cehia, și în scurt timp a devenit o specialistă atât a repertoriului baroc, cât și a celui contemporan. În acesta din urmă am putut să o aplaudăm la Festivalul Internațional George Enescu în 2021 într-o compoziție scrisă special pentru ea, Where Are You, de Ondrej Adamek.
How do I see him, I don't see him at all.
I'm actually a person who likes to explore basically all the styles, and that it's kind of always an inspiration for me, you know, to bring things from baroque music to contemporary, the other way around. Baroque music was definitely a huge part of my life, and that was something I did the most when I started my career. But from the other hand, the piece Where Are You was written especially for me, so this is a piece which was intending to represent all kinds of things my voice and I can do, and we worked about 2 years together with Ondrej Adamek on this creation, so obviously that's also something which it's very close to my heart.
Your repertoire is quite wide. Is there a part of it, a particular one, that is closer to your heart?
So obviously Baroque music is something which I will always be coming back, not only because I started with it and it's something I explored for many years, but also I think it's a very healthy thing for a voice, because you can always, like with this type of music or Mozart, you can always test the purity of your voice. It's a music where you don't have to push through a big orchestra. The Baroque instruments are usually softer, so it's something where everything has to be a pearl, everything is heard, everything should be pure, and I think for every voice it's great from time to time to actually do this. I do a lot of Liederabends, the recitals, and I love to present also the music of my country, so next to, of course, our famous name, Dvořák, Janáček, Martinoja, I also explore and try to find masterpieces of other Czech composers which are much less known, and that's always a huge pleasure for me, and I always get a great feedback from public because they are somehow greedy or hungry for knowing more, knowing things which are forgotten or unknown. So that's also something I love very much. I also am very much in love with French repertoire of the beginning of the 20th century. So everything which is Debussy, Ravel, Fără, all that kind of stuff is something I feel. Even though when I studied we didn't have too much French music in our education, I always feel like there's something I know from maybe another times or something I feel at home.
You divide your career between stage performances and concert, and I was curious, how do you bring the drama of the opera, of the stage performance, onto the concert scene?
Yeah, you know, concerts in some ways and like song recitals are even maybe more difficult because each song is a little opera and you have to tell the story in 2 minutes or sometimes even less. I think it's fantastic also to have the experience from the stage, from working with directors, from learning acting, and then to bring it to a very chamber kind of situation where you also communicate with the people much more directly, because in the opera house it's very dark. You don't see the audience, and so it's a really game between you and your colleagues and the role you're representing. But in concerts you really have to attract public with the communication, and that's something that I really love, and I need also this inspiration from people's faces.
The mezzo can be and sometimes is a more seductive instrument, vocal instrument, let's say, than the soprano. When did you become aware of this immense range of colors and possibilities that the mezzo voice has?
Yeah, I mean, the mezzo, I think for me it's the most interesting Fach, because usually we touch alto roles, and if you are a bit higher mezzo, you can also sing some soprano roles, of course not all of them. So then you actually get quite a nice choice of things. And funnily enough, when I started singing, I sang in a children's choir. And I sang the second alto. It was only me and boys, because I had a really, really low voice. And then when I started to study solo singing, I was 14, I kind of discovered that in my age, the alto roles are not so interesting. It would be just old witches or you know, kind of old ladies. So I trained myself a little bit higher, also just because I wanted to have a different repertoire. So it was a kind of a development from a very low voice to much higher. And now, for example, with the Adamic piece, whoever heard it, there is a lot of extremely low notes again. So I was recently actually rediscovering my very, very almost like Marlene Dietrich type of voice.
Wow. And do you feel you're still ongoing in this process of reshaping your voice or adapting to its natural possibilities?
I think every voice, you know, is getting more mature, and often, you know, what you could do as a young singer, maybe sometimes doing really fast coloraturas or singing non-vibrato in a higher register, that kind of transforms into kind of a more rich, more mature sound. So a lot of singers then move on to a more dramatic repertoire, for example. In my case, I didn't do it. Maybe I moved to a more dramatic repertoire in the baroque scene, but I don't think I will ever sing Wagner operas, for example. But obviously, I was doing recently much more Mahler, for example, and things which requires a little bit more maturity, vocal maturity, and also personal maturity.
If one looks at your repertoire, it will discover obviously Baroque music, Mozart, of course, some Rossini, and some of the important parts in the French repertoire at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. In between stands Carmen. What would you add? What would you like to add?
There is quite a lot of Baroque roles. I never sang on stage like Ariadante, for example. Which somehow it offered came, but I was just already promised something else. So sometimes, you know, these roles which are for you, but they never come. So it might still come. But I have to say, I mean, from the operatic repertoire, there's a lot of things I really wanted to sing and I've done. the very sad thing is that maybe the things I would like to sing the most are roles which are not for me.
Such as?
Such as Janufa or Caciocabanova, because I'm really in love with Janáček operas. And so unfortunately I'm very cross with him, but he didn't write very much for me. But there, of course, there are pieces like you did from Bluebird Castle of Bartók is something I would like to sing in the future.
Jocasta from Oedipus Rex, Stravinsky.
That's also a very
Why
nice
not?
role.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure there is still things which could surprise me as well.
You have declared that your first Carmen was the recording of Herbert von Karajan with Leontyne Prize. Do you recall that audition, that first hearing of the recording with Leontyne Prize?
Very much, because I went after the Velvet Revolution happened. Of course, everybody from my country, from my town, Brno, went to Vienna because it's very close. And so we were queuing many hours at the border because it was the first time we were allowed to go to the Western country. I mean, here in Romania, you exactly know what I'm talking about. And I had a little money. I was a 16-year-old student. So my aim in Vienna, the first thing I wanted to do was to go to a CD shop. And then I had money for one recording and I chose that one and then queued many more hours to go back to my country. So that was basically it, my visit of Vienna at that time. And then I played it, I think, for 2 weeks constantly.
When you are preparing a new role, a new approach in your repertoire, do you listen to all the recordings made before you?
I think that would be quite pretentious in our day to say, oh, I don't listen to recordings. Yes. Of course I do. And I think it's, in a way, it's a very, very interesting process to hear what different artists did with the same piece. It might be a little bit tricky if you are at the beginning of your career and then you just want to copy something you like. And I was actually very lucky when I studied that we didn't have access to any recordings, and especially in Baroque music, for example, we knew there was a movement of like early Baroque music, instruments, Baroque instruments, and all this. Movement, how to do it kind of authentically. But we only heard about it or we read from the book, so I had to make my own idea about it. I was translating all the Monteverdi's operas for myself because we just didn't have the CDs with the booklet where you could just see it in another 4 languages. And I learned a lot, and I think it was very precious for me to develop my own feeling about it, my own opinion, and then later, to be inspired and listen to other things. But I think the basis were from my own musicianship.
You're married to Sir Simon Rattle. What have you learned about music, but being so close to the conductor?
I mean, it's funny, people always think that, when are two musicians living together, you're kind of living in the music and rehearsing together. Actually, we have 3 children, so it's more about cooking and other, like a kind of who's going to pick up whom from the school. But of course, it's a fantastic thing to work with him, and you learn all kinds of things. But I think what is most special about him and his maybe way of working with other people, orchestra singers, is that he has this complete trust in people he works with, and he has this gift to get the best out of them by respecting what they are doing. And I think that not every conductor has the same approach, and I can confirm that actually that brings always the best out of everybody who works with him.
Then I will reverse the question and ask you, what have you taught him about voice, about singing?
Yeah, I think, Simon is not somebody who would, study singing himself or knew so much about technique. So even when he's casting, sometimes we kind of discuss that. And I think he also learned a lot about Baroque music. He didn't know anything about it, and he was really very fascinated, especially with the kind of like Monteverdi and before, and the polyphonic, work of Renaissance and stuff. This is something he took a lot of inspiration, and through me heard a lot of things he otherwise wouldn't hear.
How are you as a simple audience member at his concerts?
Oh, I mean, I just enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm very happy, obviously. He works usually with the most fantastic orchestras and soloists, so it's usually just a wonderful treat to be there.
As you have already mentioned, another aspect, another facet of your career is leader and song, and you have a recent recording with none other than the famed pianist Yefim Bronfman. How does leader and song fulfill your artistic self?
I think it's incredibly important for singers to do this, and I can see now the young generation of singers, they don't do this very much, which I think it's a pity, because this is something you learn so much about how to treat the text, how to shape a little bit smaller form. Everybody wants to sing immediately the big arias, yes, with a big orchestra, and obviously the times are difficult because the audience for recital it's much smaller. It's a usually extremely knowledgeable audience, but it's a niche. It's not a stadium kind of thing. So of course it's also hard in our days to sell recitals. Even very famous singers don't have always full halls. So I can see the young generation asking, why should I do it? But I think it's incredibly important, and I need to have in my season at least 2 recital tours in there, just to kind of keep this going, and also keep reminding people that it's important for a development of a young personality and young voice.
There's also a certain vulnerability that one singer must assume when doing recital of leader and songs, because you're there naked somehow, yeah, in front of the audience, no costume, no stage production, no stage partners, nothing. You're
of
just
course,
alone with the
it is in a way much more difficult, yeah, because you're extremely exposed, as you say. You have to memorize all these things, usually in different languages, and it's, if you do a proper recital length, it can be 90 minutes of music where you are just yourself, and it is scary, of course, but I think that's the reason also one has to go through it, and I'm sure it will help everybody then later for their few arias in the operas.
How do you reward yourself after a really good performance?
Oh, what I like after a really good performance to go with all the musicians involved and maybe people who came just to restaurant and to have a great food and wine. I think that is the nicest thing you can do after a recital.
Do you have a special routine prior to the performance or the concert, whatever, that helps you be in that perfect mood, or as perfect as possible, in order to deliver to the audience your best version of yourself?
Yeah, of course, we all, I think, have some rituals. What I like to do, and I do now for many years, it's yoga, and that I definitely do basically every day, but also the day of the concert. Me personally, I learned a lot from meditation, and also not only the physical preparation for a concert, because voice, it's a 2 centimeters long little muscle, and if you are not sick or something, if it's in a good shape, you don't have to warm up too much for it, I think. But we are singing with the whole body, so I think the physical condition and kind of the releasing of the muscles and doing the right exercises, it's even more important actually for a singer. I go usually for a walk. I revise my texts. Sometimes I write them down if I have to do it by heart. That helps me. I have a kind of a photographic memory. So sometimes before a recital, I sit for 2 hours and write all the words down, and also gives me some kind of a security that I really know it. Things like that.
If you had the chance to encounter a mezzo-soprano from the past and say thank you to her for her personal contribution in your development as an artist, who would that be?
I think it would be Janet Baker, and because she's still alive, I hope I will have the chance to do that personally.
Great. You must have at least one guilty pleasure. Tell me the guiltiest.
Oh my God, guilty pleasure. I don't know, a good glass of red wine.
Great. Excellent. I'm totally with you here. Now, another exercise of imagination, if that's okay with you. If you were to switch places for just one night with Sir Simon Rattle, what would you conduct?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. I would conduct Tristan and Isolde.
Wow. And if he were to switch places with you, what would he sing?
Oh my God, you have to ask him. I have no idea. I have no idea. I would like him to sing Adamek. That would be very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and challenging indeed, yes, because everybody who saw the concert here in Bucharest, which is a local hearing, by the way, the local premiere of this piece, was absolutely astonished by the challenging part of you going from one extreme of the range up to the other one. Do you need like a special kind of rest, of vocal rest after a night like that one?
Not really. You know, when I started to do this piece, I was wondering, because it was quite unusual for any classical music singer, and he also didn't want me to sound very much like opera singer.
Yes.
So there is this movement where he wants like a flamenco type of singing with a chest voice really until A flat, which it's nothing I've done in the past. But surprisingly enough, actually, it sort of relaxes my voice. I even now did it 2 consequent days in different cities. I mean, it is challenging, and I was glad that the third day was free. But it wasn't like the next day I wouldn't have a voice, or it's in some ways, because I think also my speaking voice is rather low, and probably it is very natural. As I told you, I was singing very low as a child. It doesn't strain my voice, which is a good news.
Now, last question. If you were to sing for the rest of your career the music of just one composer, could you make that choice, this exclusive choice?
Well, that would be really hard, but
yes,
if you pressed me and pushed me and said you have to choose one,
just one.
I think it would be Johann Sebastian Bach.